Welcome to the Most Excellent 80s Movies podcast. It's the podcast where a filmmaker and two improvisers really battle for the hearts and minds of the people who love or hate the movies of the 1980s and feel like looking back at them with 2019 eyes might be a good idea. And in some cases, I feel like it might not. But this is Transformers, the movie from 1986.
Hold on tight. The most incredible rock and roll adventure ever is here.
Feed him to the shotguns.
Starring Judd Nelson as Hot Rod, Leonard Nimoy as
Galvatron.
and Orson Welles.
I, Unicron.
Beyond good, beyond evil, beyond your wildest imagination. Transformers, the movie. Transformers, the movie. Coming to a theater near you this August.
How many times do you think they say the word Transformers during the course of that trailer?
I just like that they make a selling point out of Orson Welles because their target audience was like, Orson Welles, sign me up. I'm 8.
Well, but they also do a really weird thing where they're like, with the voice of Judd Nelson, and then they just show his character punch someone.
Yeah.
With the fist of Judd Nelson.
It's so
A rock and roll
weird.
adventure. I mean, that's the first time I've heard that.
I do think that the sound
It
in the
is a rock and
background
roll adventure.
is the best
It's a huge
part of this whole thing.
Part of the movie.
Yeah.
Vince DiCola, who did the synthesizer music, and for Rocky IV, I love he's a classical pianist now, and he put out an album of classical piano mixes of this soundtrack.
Really?
It's wonderful. I highly recommend
I
it.
That's
would
exciting.
be into
I'm
experiencing
into that.
Yeah.
That's a deep cut recommendation.
That is a good one.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome to our podcast.
So that's Nathan Blackwell. He's
Hi
a
there.
filmmaker. As you know, if you're here
Is that
listening
Krissy
to
Lenz
stuff.
over there?
It is. I'm still here.
It's a very long table.
It is. I'm the...
Will you pass the salt?
I'll just have to get up and walk it over to you like Michael Keaton in Bat.
Thank you for the Batman reference.
I'll take my horse.
And with us today is Mr. Bill Binder,
Hello.
an improviser and one of the founding members of Torch Theater and so many other things. International improviser.
Sure.
Binder.
Sure, why not?
And this movie was your suggestion.
Yes, because I love this movie.
Okay.
When DVD came out, I said, I will get a DVD player for 5 movies, and this was one of them.
Now I feel like we can't be friends.
I respect. I'm not saying everyone must enjoy it.
No, I'm kidding. Okay, so tell us about, obviously you love this movie.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about your, history and experience with this movie, and, were you a Transformers kid? Tell us about it.
Well, I was way more a He-Man kid in those days, for sure. The thing is, though, because you always had that one kid in school who couldn't do anything because their parents thought everything was from Satan.
Oh, sure.
Right, you know that kid.
Most things are.
Right. But that aside, growing up, all of us were super, sheltered. Right,
Okay.
We couldn't, you know, it was you can only see the safest stuff. We could only see the Disney movies and stuff, and
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to play with G.I. Joes.
Right.
They had guns and they were violent.
Right, and because this Saturday, well, it was a weekday cartoon,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
was fine and acceptable. Our parents were all like, "Oh yeah, you can go see this movie. That's a name we know." And then
and they were betrayed.
We'd never seen anything like that.
Come on, kids, let's watch some trauma.
It was and
it was Game of Thrones for children.
To this rock and roll soundtrack orgasm, and it just I'd never seen anything like that movie before, and it really just was sort of like mind blowing. Yeah, and just dealing with like loss and grief and how they dealt with it.
Yeah, in a major way. Like it slams it down your throat.
If you know what you're looking at, I suppose it does. Like, we'll get to me. But so,
sure.
You went to see this movie and you were like impacted by it, but you just kept wanting to go back and see it again and again and again.
Sure. Well, for one thing, free passes over the summer where I grew up. So,
like, you could go to see any movie.
Where I grew up was called Winchester Mall. And they would come to our school at the end of the summer and give us like tickets for all the kids' movies all summer.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. So I Follow That Bird a bunch that summer, I think.
Follow That Bird. I love Follow That Bird.
Very different film.
So I've also got like a deep traumatic experience with this film as well.
Okay.
And so to play it, because you're coming at it.
I've never seen this.
You've never,
I've never seen a Transformer.
But you've seen like, have you seen He-Man or anything like that? Like
yes.
the cartoons? Okay, so like the 80s cartoons. So they were made by, I believe, the same company, right? Like G.I. Joe, maybe He-Man.
G.I. Joe and Dick and Filmation was He-Man.
Right.
Yeah.
But they were very, very similar. They all came about from like the whole Reagan era that commercials can be up to a half hour now, and so they were all kind of engineered to sell the toys, but they were all very structurally similar to where you had, the main people and a rotating cast of new toy characters come in, and there'd always be a problem, and they'd always like. The classic move in all of them would be that they would grapple and then one would like full body throw the other one. That was the extent of violence.
Yeah.
And so to fully experience like the seismic shake of this film is to go from that experience where literally violence has no consequences.
Right.
And then to go
it's like Power Ranger level violence.
Exactly. And then to go into the movie with full-on Game of Thrones massacres and violence, it was just there was no comparison at that time, and it all came from there's a great video probably on YouTube. I caught it on Amazon where it's called Transformers the Movie When Greed is Good.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the whole idea is that Hasbro wanted to get rid of their pre-existing Transformers action figures and replace them with new ones.
Right.
And so they issued the insane mandate to the writers saying, kill off all the old characters, replace them with new characters. So they saw
turn those same characters into different versions.
Sure, a couple.
Characters.
Yeah.
And so they basically
give it a different hat.
They gave the writers a full. They give them the mandate to kill all these characters, but they gave them they unleashed them, and by having to do that, they created an extremely adult story for selling kids and toys. I mean,
right.
So like it's just like the characters that get so.
I'm just gonna you're just gonna hear the sound of me sighing deeply throughout this entire podcast.
All the dudes that you see die, they'd been around for the whole.
We were invested in those characters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's just.
Yeah.
And I mean, who dies besides Optimus Prime?
There's like 15 guys who die
at the beginning of the spaceship when he comes on and just kills everyone on the ship and blows their heads off.
Megatron hijacks the shuttle that's going to Earth.
Okay.
And then there's 5 guys there.
I should let you know, I could not figure out what was happening in this movie.
Right.
That's fair.
I have no idea what was happening.
That's all right.
The robots look the same to me.
So when Megatron basically hijacks the shuttle and then 5 guys instantly die, those guys were 5 guys who had been through 4 seasons of Transformers, the TV show.
Oh.
And then their head explodes.
Yeah. And then, like, there's, like, flames and smoke coming out of his mouth and just... Yeah, and then the kids are holding their favorite toy in the theater, and then that guy explodes, and you see the head fly off.
Okay, so I can relate to that, because when we went to see... what came before Endgame? What was it called? Avengers...
Infinity War.
Infinity War. We went to see Infinity War. That is literally what happened to Rocket. He was sitting there with his Black Panther and
But start the movie with that scene.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And then everything else is just... You're just in this weird, shaken state.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it seemed to me like the only robot who I could tell was dead was Optimus Prime, because he turned gray.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that was like a huge... That was also like the most traumatic... Like, most of these characters were side characters, and then like there's like
the Shark Bots and
those are brand new.
They're brand new, but
coasters and
all the weird colored ones are brand new.
Yeah.
It's all like these classic, like, old looking cars,
Jeeps and trucks and
and like ambulances and things like that. All the guys who die in like in the first 20 minutes, they were like the third tier of heroes.
Okay.
You know, and so then the second tier...
Things that would make sense to transform into a robot.
Exactly.
Like, because so like Optimus Prime, his chest is like the front of the truck he becomes.
Yes.
Right? So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and then you've got the second tier, which kind of got out unscathed. You've got like Jazz and Bumblebee and some of the characters. There's a couple characters
I've heard of those.
Who kind of came out a little unscathed. They just didn't have much to do with the movie.
Right.
And then you had like the top tier, and that's Megatron and Optimus Prime, and they had to kill off.
That's the He-Man and Skeletor of this.
Yeah,
right.
And so the problem between the second, third tier characters is that, you know, the second tier, you can't really kill, or you can't kill all of them, because some of them are kind of important or small, become icons or whatever, like Bumblebee.
Yeah.
But then Optimus Prime, Hasbro didn't realize how significant Optimus Prime was. They didn't
It's
realize
like killing He-Man and Skeletor in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah,
It's like killing Ned Stark at the end of season 1. You're like, wait a minute, I thought that was our
you
lawful
can do that
good
at the
shepherd.
end, but you do that at the beginning just to replace the new hero.
There was like this huge spike in like child psychologists, because those kids didn't know how to deal with. They'd never dealt with loss before.
Yeah.
Honestly, like they could have still killed 90% of all those Transformers, and if they had kept Optimus Prime, then I think the letter writing campaigns would have been reduced by 75%.
Super quick aside, if I may, because
Of
the
course you may.
G.I. Joe movie was in production at that time, and they were going to kill Duke.
Right.
And they're like, oh no, we can't do that. So if you watch that movie,
Those Transformers
so he
assholes
just
ruined it for
It
us.
looks like he dies, and then he's not in the movie for the rest. And then at the very end of the film, like, we won, and there's like a random voiceover, like, and Duke's okay.
He made it back to his home planet.
Yeah.
Well, clearly Optimus Prime is fine. Like, he's alive now.
Well, so
Many years later, they rebooted. Yeah, but he was
in
gone
the cartoon,
after that.
they
Yeah.
had to do damage control and bring him back. And then the whole Bayaverse, which neither of us are a fan of.
Yeah.
It's not that it's... I don't know. Let's just leave it at that.
It takes neither the visuals nor the spirits from the original.
My problem with
Yeah.
my problem it's not that I'm a purist, but my problem is that.
But you are, though, so why...
Well, no, like if things were... So I really enjoyed actually the Bumblebee movie.
I heard that was good.
If anything, it kind of felt like we actually like Transformers. Let's make a story where the Transformers are characters. That's the thing that always bugged me with the Michael Bay ones, is that you never really got the feeling like they were characters, you know.
But also, and like, I think the new She-Ra show is great, and I'm not its target audience at all, and I shouldn't be, right? And so it's like, I'm not being purist about that. I'm like, yes, let young children now have something uplifting and body positive and proactive for them that doesn't have to spend time worrying about what I want, but it's still true to the spirit of what it was.
Yeah. What I really enjoyed as a kid with the Transformers was the adventure aspect, and also like the so to me, like, Transformers is like He-Man, to where I'm sure there's a great moral to it. It's not at top of mind. You know, what I liked about He-Man was like the pseudo-fantasy Conan aspect of adventure.
Right.
And what I liked with Transformers was kind of a sci-fi robot-y aspect of adventure. Some of the things that I liked in this movie, even then when I was being traumatized, is a feeling of sci-fi war.
Yes. Yeah.
And,
Okay, so... Yeah, I get that you guys, and believe me, like, I learned my lesson because I think everyone will get their voice heard, but I posted something on Facebook that said, I hate this. This is like a 90-minute headache. Why did I agree to this? Because I was excited about it. I don't know from Transformers. I've never played with them. I never watched the cartoon as a kid, even though I did watch He-Man, and like, I'm into Ninja Turtles. Like, I pretty much am well versed in all that stuff, but I never was interested in or drawn to Transformers in any way. I've never seen any of the Michael Bay movies, and it's like with the Michael Bay movies, I can't tell what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
It's like looking at a Magic Eye video.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what that is.
It's. I like that it's from the aspect of the human perspective, and so everything is big and intimidating, but it's such a jumble of design. It's difficult.
It's
to
but the design
chaos. Yeah.
It is chaos. That's exactly right. It's
and I think
chaos.
that's intentional, unfortunately.
Because you should be able to, like, I enjoy the idea of a transformer, of the idea that something that's ordinary and everyday can become something extraordinary and be, like, living right under your nose, and you didn't even know there was this whole other world of, like, robots in disguise. Okay, cool. I'm down with that. But you should be able to see that this piece of the truck is actually this piece of his chest, and his forehead is made of that.
Agreed.
You know?
Yeah. And then that's also one of the reasons I feel like all the robots that they've made to replace the original line in this movie just don't. There's not that sticking point of reality.
Right.
It's like you had like Optimus Prime, who's a truck that turns into a robot.
And that makes sense too in terms of like the law of matter not being created or destroyed. Like he's made out of that much metal.
Right. The Michael Bay movies, it's like there's these robots that can turn into whatever they want, and there's no rules.
But with like the new robots in Transformers the movie, they're like
you're talking about the new ones of 1986.
I'm talking about 1980s. Yeah, the new ones of 1986. So like they're all these like brightly colored pastel futuristic sci-fi vehicles that just don't have a connection.
It's neat for a minute, but that's
so
all.
You're talking about the Judd Nelson one.
Yes.
He was new.
Yes.
He's new.
All the characters who we followed, those are new.
Or almost all.
So the girl Transformer was new?
Brand new.
And I want to talk about her for a second. Can we talk about her now, or should we talk about her later?
Well, you said you wanted to say something.
So almost all the new characters that we're following in Transformers the movie, they're brand new for everyone.
And especially for me, because I figured they would have been there the whole time.
No, they kind of. I don't remember if they really did anything with them. It's like I feel like I don't even remember there being toys of a lot of these characters.
There were, but there was less interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about
RC.
Oh, that's her name?
Yep.
I couldn't connect anybody's name to anybody's robot.
I've literally seen this movie probably 50 to 80 times as a kid, and there's still some people I don't know their names.
Yeah.
My appreciation for RC has grown and grown because you were talking earlier how to replace toys. They didn't make a toy of her.
Of course not. Why would they? Gross.
Right. Sure. There was the girl from Mask. They didn't make. They didn't do that. So why was she in the movie? The thing is, the Autobots and Decepticons dealt with loss differently, right? The good guys used that to unify them, and the bad guys used that to separate them. And like
to throw a bunch of people out of one of the other ones.
That's so brutal.
It was socialism versus capitalism, but like RC's the character with the empathy, right? And she was always with Daniel, the boy, right, and with us as an audience because we were as traumatized as him, and she was like, "It's gonna be okay." right? And that was like, I really appreciate her role in the film of being the empathy that we needed.
And do you think that's why she was a girl robot, the only girl robot? Because they're like, no boy robot would be able to have the empathy.
Yeah.
Like, that would be gross.
No, I think Bumblebee was always kind of the empathetic character from the original TV series. He was kind of, because he was smaller and he was the one who had the connection with the boy who was now a man in this one.
With his own son.
Why is there a little boy?
I think there's always got to be a character in these that the core audience is, in theory, supposed to put themselves in those shoes. That's from the toy company's point of view.
Yeah, I don't. I don't understand anything. Like, so you guys are talking about. Here's why I couldn't identify any of the characters either, because like, okay, Judd Nelson as this, Orson Welles as that, but they altered everybody's voice to the point where it was almost unrecognizable, except obviously like Leonard Nimoy and Robert Stack have voices that are are able to fight through the digitization or whatever it is that they're doing to their voices. But like, why pay Judd Nelson money?
Right.
And
then what are you going to cast Judd Nelson in, like the continuation of the animated series?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like you said, they're like, and Orson Welles. What stars appear in my eyes? Were you guys like, Judd Nelson? Judd Nelson?
No.
I was excited about Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, same. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see being.
And the Micro Machine guy.
Yeah.
And yes. Now the Micro Machine guy I do care about, and Micro Machines I did.
But yeah,
care about.
so basically pretty much everyone who gets killed off, or all the people who die in that early battle, they're the only characters we knew about. And so everyone else on this Autobot city, everyone who's like brightly pastel colored and made of like sci-fi material and stuff like that, they're brand new, and as far as we knew, they only existed for this movie.
And that's the guy who had
that was
living
another part what made it kind of trippy.
Inside of him?
No, he had existed before.
Okay.
Like the things that turned into stuff that is modern and recognizable, like the boom box and the microscope, like those dudes are from the past. Those are from the show.
The microscope I found troubling.
Why is that?
Because
an enormous microscope.
Right. But at one point he's like examining Optimus Prime, and he's like, I don't think he's gonna live. And it's like, you're a microscope. You're not a.
But I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you're
doctor
really
died.
not a doctor. And like, did the microscope shoot lasers at one point? Like, it shouldn't be capable of.
I think he was the pacifist.
But I like the idea that there's like one nerd kid who's going to come running up to all the boys playing with their, and he's got, I got the microscope guy.
I remember that toy, and the box was like, real working microscope magnifies up to like 1.2 times or something like that. Ooh.
Mainly, it's just you putting your face closer to whatever the thing is. And then, but I also was really confused about like I said, Optimus Prime, you can tell that he's dead because he turned into gray.
Right.
Everyone else just gets put back together.
Well,
and then
no. So
again.
they blow holes, and before it's like there had been no consequences to getting shot other than you like fall down. And
The
now
one guy,
they're
the
putting,
Judd Nelson robot, they just put his leg back on, and they're like,
oh yeah, the Robert. So the Robert Stack.
oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
Robert Stack.
Yeah. So that was so everyone got shot up and died, and everything became mortal except for one or two moments, which was broke the logic of the story. Whereas Robert Stack, Ultra Magnus, gets blown apart, and then the Junkions just put him back together. It's like, didn't we just watch like an hour of like deadly death consequences?
Right.
And then now they're just piecing dudes back together.
Mostly
Bring
dead,
them to
yeah.
Optimus Prime. Like
That's when the psychologist comes in again.
Yeah. And that was the whole Eric Idle business, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Starscream's death, that was shocking.
Oh my- yeah.
When he's got the crown and he shoots him and
That's Cobra Commander, right?
that's Cobra
Yeah.
Commander, and
Uh-huh.
he just crumbles to dust.
Yeah,
It's like,
he-
oh my gosh,
he's
that
like
looked
one of the
painful.
top characters.
Well, and they show that other guy's head just floating around. That's
Yep.
the last thing you see is like a head floating around.
Right. So I recommend this movie. This is jumping the gun.
No, you can't possibly
Just from
recommend this movie.
from like despite the fact that if you're a fan of Transformers or not, just from like a cinema experience, and then
No,
Nathan. And a psychological experience of what an outlier this movie is.
Okay, and I understand that, and I appreciate that, and I totally.
Not telling people that they need to enjoy it.
Because they won't. They're not going to enjoy it. Like, you guys are just going to re-traumatize yourself. And, like, everyone else is going to be like, I don't know what I'm looking at. Because there's nothing in the movie. And, like, everybody who's defending it is like, it's not supposed to be for you. It's supposed to be for us, the fans who watched. Okay.
Oh, boo that.
Right.
But it is about context. I'll give you that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they give you none context.
Yeah.
Because there should at least be a little bit of explanation of, like, this is this, and that is that, and here's the world we live in. Like, that's not that hard to do. I'm pretty sure they do that at the beginning of all the Lord of the Rings movies.
They did it in Dune. It's like, here's 3 planets, the Emperor's here, here's spice. Got it? Good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here's a map. Look at the map. So I'm not saying, and that's the thing. It's like I don't even think that like a old school hardcore Transformer fan is the right audience for this movie, because it just runs right over your childhood. Like, this itself is as traumatic, as even maybe the Michael Bay movies are to the purity, quote, purity of the original thing. It's kind of this is kind of like the. Did you ever see the Ewok movie? Any of the Ewok movies?
I'm very familiar.
So you
with
remember?
the
So
movies.
the first Ewok movie, people land on the planet. They have trouble with the Ewoks, but the family gets along with them.
Star Cruiser crash.
And then the second one, they murder everyone.
Yes.
Wait. Maybe I don't know what you're talking about.
So-
Are these animated?
No, these are live action.
Yeah.
In that case, I've never heard of
the
what you're
second
talking
Ewok
about.
movie, they murdered
straight
the
up
whole
murder
family.
everyone. Yeah.
Who
Except for
murdered
one.
who? Ewoks
bad guys.
murdered?
No,
like
bad
a
guys.
witch and some claymation.
Some bad
lizards.
some bad guy aliens.
Yeah.
They murdered the whole family that
Of
were
Ewoks?
Of humans who live with them now.
Stop talking over me, and I'll explain.
No.
The humans who were the protagonists of the first movie.
What's a protagonist? Sorry, no, I'm just fucking with you.
So they murdered the whole family of protagonists except for one kid.
Okay.
In the second one.
That doesn't sound fun either.
The second movie is kind of like Transformers the movie.
Yeah.
Okay, but did they sort of like say at the beginning of those, like, hey, these are Ewoks. Humans live with them now.
No, because everyone saw Return of the Jedi.
And Caravan of Courage.
Yeah. I don't think Hasbro really cared. I think they were just trying to...
No, that's what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
They did not care.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
their intention, Hasbro's intention was,
Sell
we're going to
toys.
take our core audience, we're going to replace the line of toys, and then we're going to put in a brand new line of toys, and they're going to buy all of those now. So that was their intent.
Right, and
What
I
they didn't
totally
realize
get
is
that.
that everyone had emotional stakes to these characters because they didn't see them as toys, they saw them as characters,
Right.
as people, especially Optimus Prime. And so that's why this movie is interesting and compelling, for just the brutality of taking a line of existing characters and what
And
this
killing
story, and then wiping them out.
Well, and I think like
If anything, it's an oddity, it's a curiosity.
yes,
If you didn't have, so Bill and I have like an emotional stake because we were those fans and we did get that trauma.
Yeah.
And so we're connected to this story emotionally.
Yes.
But people who don't have that experience can see it as almost like this outlier, as this
But
almost
here's the thing,
case
Nathan.
study.
But they can't though, because I watched the movie and like even you the only way that is true is that you have to have a you or a Bill or a Dorian sitting there like, no, you don't understand. This is this, and I'm like, okay. But this movie is not giving me the context. You are giving me the context. So
Right. Well, that's
just
the great thing with my recommendation is that only people listening to this podcast will receive it.
And I will believe you because I would have guessed that there's enough context.
No.
But I mean, your experience is real, so I believe you 100%.
Krissy,
you know,
your
yeah.
experience is real.
So
Thanks,
I
guys.
stand corrected that that context isn't there in the way I thought it would be.
Well, and I think part of it is
Poor Roger Ebert.
He hated it, right? He also hated it?
Oh, I'm sure. Orson Welles hated it.
Yeah.
Well, but there were things I liked about it. There
But
were
luckily,
things
he
I liked
shortly
about
died
it.
afterwards.
Everybody
his
died,
last
apparently.
movie.
Yeah, right.
And Scatman Crothers,
Orson
too.
Welles turned gray and
Scatman Crothers
so-
died after this too.
Yeah, before it was released, or very shortly after.
Yeah.
This was his final movie as well.
it was a lot of people's final movie. Was it Robert Stack's final movie?
I don't think it's a far reach to say it possibly killed them. No, okay. Anyway, there are things that I liked about it and moments that I enjoyed. I think that there were a lot of really funny dialogue. Like the guy who says, "I got better things to do tonight than die."
It's a kid's toy.
That's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Good for you.
With
I'm
such
glad
conviction.
that you have plans. And then the part where they're they're at the Eric Idle place, and they go weep weep ninny bong. You know what I'm talking about? Do you know the whole thing?
Ba weep grana weep nitty bomb.
Yeah, okay. That. and then they go from being really mad at them to smash cut to a dance party. And I was like, yeah. And
Dance party to
think
Weird Al.
a Weird Al song is playing, yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'm here for this. This is what I want the rest of the movie to be, is this.
Eric Idle with laser gun nipples.
Yeah.
Were they nipples?
They were exactly where nipples are.
Would be.
Oh my god! I'm telling you, I couldn't tell what anything was. And
Again, I just wanted to say, like 90% of the things that appear in this movie have never been in Transformers.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all
that's
psychedelic to us as well.
the Sharktrons and the
Yeah. One thing I loved about the Eric Idle scene was like they were robots turned into motorcycles, but they just bent the rules of Transformers where like they were riding each other and they'd fall off, and the one who fell off turned into a motorcycle, and the
Yeah.
motorcycle turned and just ride him in
Yeah.
return. I was like, what?
That was great.
I thought that was very weird, and that they would all be riding inside one of their friends.
Yeah.
Like, could you just turn into a train so that we can get out of here? I found that very weird. But yeah, like, so do they have souls? Is that what, like, who makes Transformers? Like, are they born?
That's
Is that
what-
why they had to have a Smurfette in there so they could, like, are there
It's
baby
just like-
Transformers?
it's just like the
Are they
Smurfs.
hatched?
It's
Are
just
they-
like the Smurfs, where they can't answer that because it's too. They can't. It's like Smurfs and Transformers and like Pokemon. There's only so much you can ask before it gets to really weird, uncomfortable conversations, and kids can't enjoy them.
How are my Pokemon doing right now in my formless void?
Right.
Are
Right.
they
Yeah.
good?
Are they
okay?
happy or are they in agony?
Yes. And the one guy at one point said something about salami and bologna.
Oh, the T-Rex robot.
Yeah,
Cesium, salami, and
Yeah.
barium bologna.
Yeah, I believe that sounds about right.
yeah. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I wrote that.
I always
down.
like the dinosaurs.
Yeah,
the Dinobots.
See, that's what the Dinobots. Those are original old school ones as well. And again, you have the connection of like, oh, it's a dinosaur and a robot.
Yes,
It's
I understand that. Yeah. It's a dinosaur and a robot. Cool. Like, I get it.
Right.
Yeah.
But the ones who turn into like just weird stuff.
yeah. No, us
Agreed.
too.
Yep.
Okay.
Agreed.
And then, I also liked, and this was again, like most of my happy time was spent with Eric Idle on that trash planet. Because they speak TV. And as their like battle cry was like, eliminates even the toughest stains. And that was very clever. Like, that was smart and funny. Here's something else I don't understand. Unicron is just a big old ball.
That eats planets.
That
Yep.
eats planets by literally going chomp, 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 chomp. Chomp, 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 chomp. And I couldn't understand what was happening. Like, when he's eating
Yeah.
a planet, chomp, 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 chomp. I was like, what's happening? Oh, the Unicron is eating that planet. What is which part of that is Unicron? The port that's going chomp, 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 chomp. And I'm like, point to it on the screen. Like,
It's the whole thing. Unicron is a planet.
It's a planet.
that eats planets.
That doesn't make sense, Nathan.
I will defend that one point because it's kind of, we enjoy now as adults the sort of like the more nebulous threats, and like it's like we're used to like I'm a robot that turns into a gun. And then somebody holds a gun and shoots at you. I'm like, right.
Someone has to pick up the guy who's a gun.
Yeah, or maybe it's a jet, or right. But it's just like this thing that just comes out of space and eats your planet and is alive. I was like, I can't.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of just made it creepier and scarier and more unknown.
Well, and when it finally turned into a being, I was like, could it have just been this the whole time, please? Like, so that we could see it, like, taking with his hand? Because I just couldn't figure out the mechanics of, like, what was the mouth?
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Right? Once it became a thing and they hopped inside of it, I was like, I understand the context of this. They're in his brain, and these are his, like, antibodies or whatever that are these hooks on red string that are going to, like, try and chomp you up. I can categorize that into something that makes sense to me. But, like, when it was just a ball eating another ball, did not compute. I was like, nope, file not found. But I did love the music, and I really liked You've Got the Touch. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
The whole thing, right?
They use that in Boogie Nights, too.
Yeah.
Do they really?
Yes, they do.
Oh, my God. And I liked... I found when it was evil Leonard Nimoy, I found that appealing.
Yeah. He's a great villain.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He really is.
And like his voice was really nice, and it made me feel safe. But so I don't know if I said this part already, and stop me if I did, but like Power Rangers does the same thing. They do it in a much smarter way, right? So Power Rangers every season remarkets those same Power Rangers to you in a different way, but without causing you any like trauma. So what they do is like one season they're Dino Rangers, and then a new crystal falls to Earth, and they have to become Mega Dino Rangers, and then they hand it off to the Power Rangers Samurai. But then at the end of season 1 of that, something happens and they have to become Super Samurai, and there's like one extra stripe on the costume. But all of a sudden they have entirely new weapons, and it's like, to the store, Mom!
I think this is a case book study of how not to do this, and I think this was a huge lesson learned by like the toy industry.
Yeah.
Not the writers. The writers are like, I think they got exactly what they wanted out of it. But yeah, the
100%.
toy,
but exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah. The toy people are like, wait a minute, these young people have feelings.
No, literally, like Hasbro did not compute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I can like putting it in that context, I can relate to like how broken Rocket was after the Avengers dusted away.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's and I appreciate that your generation of men, which I will say because I have yet to have a single woman approach me like, don't be talking shit about my Transformers. Like, I'm glad that you have this. I'm sorry they hurt you. Like, but you know, I'm pleased that you're all so on board with it still. I put something on Facebook that was just like, this is worse than Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and some people had some feedback.
But I think both are true. I think, like you say, for people who are in a specific time in a specific place, it connected. And we, being those people, shouldn't expect other people to have that experience.
Right.
Yeah. Which I guess, to reiterate my recommendation, it's not for people who watched Transformers back then because they've already seen the movie.
Right.
It's really to take in this weird kind of anomaly.
Okay, but here, I'll say this. I think Buckaroo Banzai is that. Like, this weird anomaly that is of its time,
Or heavy metal.
No, the fascination for Transformers is what a massive miscalculation it was by Hasbro. And also, again, like, it just to kind of watch gobsmacked at, again, like 3 minutes into the movie is dark as fuck.
Oh, yeah. It really it is.
That's what I'm recommending.
The ball ate the other ball.
Yeah, no, like literally you see
Robots
children playing in the streets.
And
laughing.
then running in terror.
Yeah, and then running in terror, the whole planet.
Also,
they're trying to escape. The escape shuttles get sucked in.
Yeah, they're dead.
There is nothing. It's like melancholia for robots.
And then White Lion starts.
Yeah.
This is a movie to watch on a chemical.
Yeah.
I think I would have.
And I
enjoyed
think
it more
part of the
okay.
cult following is just the insanity of it.
Yeah.
It's
I
also
get
the
that. That's
shared
different.
trauma.
Yeah, but it's that too.
Like, no shit.
Right.
Like, I don't like any of the main characters that they're pushing on me.
Okay.
You know?
No, I don't either. But all I'm saying is, like, even the bonkersness of it doesn't translate unless someone's standing there telling you who those people are. Like, they'll know this guy's new. I'm like, God, no, okay, sure.
Sure.
But I wanted to share with you some of the things that people reached out to me to let me know. Our good friend Mac Duncan says, I still have 100 or more from my original collection of Transformers from 1984 to 89. Initially, I was attracted to the novelty of having 2 toys in one, but the mythology created by Hasbro / Marvel?
Oh, yeah, Marvel Comics told kind of the story as well.
Okay.
There was a comic line.
Was a classic good versus evil struggle that could have potentially rivaled Star Wars.
Well, that's Mac's opinion.
I hear you, Mac, and I don't agree.
I've been to Mac's house. I can back up that he does have hundreds of Transformers
Thanks
in his house.
for writing in. We're going to judge every comment.
No, but like, I mean, if Mac is saying that, then
Yeah.
it like had an impression on him. 'Cause
Oh, yeah.
that's a person who's into storytelling.
Well,
you
and that
know?
mythology continued in Japan. I mean, the cartoon continued and the books continued for years and years. And after here, we kind of like, headmasters were done. But
Jonathan Elliott, who was our guest on the Thing episode, says that this movie was important because it's the first big implementation of a Saturday morning cartoon to the big screen, and it was like, compared to the cartoon on TV, it was like trading in a moped for a GPZ 900R, which I assume is a fancier moped.
That's another thing we haven't. Another thing we haven't touched on is this was my first, like the animation style got a massive upgrade.
Yeah.
This is like my first experience with anime because it
Okay.
effectively was done in a very, they kept the character designs, but it was done in terms of just the animation style of just this high detail, high kinetic.
cinematic.
Yeah, and like you actually get these lighting effects and nothing like the cartoon, which was just churned out. This was like a $6 million feature, and then all the other series probably combined didn't even equal $6 million.
I just have one more I want to share with you. From friend of the show, Logan Blackwell. Do you know what I'm going to say?
Yep, I know the story.
He was so traumatized.
So
that
he's
he-
8 years old at this point.
Do you want to just tell it?
No.
Or do you want me to tell it
You
in
tell it.
Logan's words? Logan says, at the time, because of the death toll, I hated this movie. I even wrote an angry letter to Hasbro that started off, "You should be ashamed of yourself." Did he write it by hand, Nathan, or did he type it out like a typewriter?
I don't know.
You can take the movie as cynical movie making, which it really is, wiping out your beloved toys so that you can buy a ton of new crap, none of whom I recall being good enough to make it into the live action films, or more charitably, a longtime fan can enjoy it as the dramatic, bloody finale of one era of Transformers, boosted by drastically improved animation from the TV show, the new era being incidental a la Fortinbras in Hamlet. Did I seriously just reference Hamlet? You did, Logan. You did. And then he has a couple of notes. One, the commercial for this movie, going off a 33-year-long memory, was centered around whether Optimus Prime gets killed, which means nothing to a first-time viewer. But that's not the trailer I saw, right? And the movie was always just aimed at fans, so it's like they don't care whether I understand it, right? Ultra Magnus dying and then coming back in a movie where dead means dead doesn't make any sense. And so, thanks, Logan. Thanks for weighing in. Tell your brother not to recommend this movie. And then a couple other people sort of got a little bit more mad at me. It was an inverse proponent. Like
How many of them are men?
100%.
So what would you say would be the female equivalent to this? My Little
honestly
Pony?
was trying to think of that. Well, I mean, yeah, I'm sure it would have been terribly traumatizing if they all of a sudden like just killed off.
Yeah, like in my
Rainbow
mind,
Dash.
yeah, because there's not they don't typically have like violence in like the war sense, but like imagine like if there was some horrible storm and then 80% of them all died in the storm, like drowned.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I didn't have to experience anything.
The Care Bears were
along-
wished out of existence.
Yeah, and then the existing
Yeah.
My Little Ponies are like walking through a brand new forest.
Yeah.
And then they meet all these new people, and we're really following these new people. That's our experience.
I totally, and I
But
get
that's
it.
why I'm recommending it as such a weird fucking thing.
Okay. But like, I will counter your recommendation and just say, no, just talk to someone who liked it. Like, you don't need to put your eyes on it. You don't need to experience the 90-minute headache. But I was trying to think of that, and I was trying to think of something that would be at that level of like just disturbingness. But they didn't have to do that to girls. Like, Barbie would come out with a new Barbie thing every minute of every day, right? They would just like churn out
all sorts of toy lines added new stuff and new branches and stuff.
They would just kind of they'd have their core characters and they'd introduce new ones, and then they'd have they kind of figure out like, oh, okay, these characters are kind of third tier. They can kind of disappear and we don't really see them anymore.
we'll just never check back in on.
Yeah, like, oh, we saved the flamethrower guy. Thanks, flamethrower guy. Well, you're now part of the G.I. Joes, and we'll never see you again.
Yeah.
But like Secret of the Sword, I think did it very effectively. The He-Man movie.
Okay.
Where the first 3 minutes, it's just like, we're going to a new place. We're going to meet some new people. We're going to empathize. We're going to be with them and experience them and see how they're neat, and then bring them back home and have them meet the people we're familiar with, and then let them do their own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, like, Pokemon, what it does is he's visiting a brand new country, a brand new region every time.
Easy.
And that's already, see, they
They've
do
built
it, they
that
just
in.
do it smarter with Pokemon and Power Rangers. They're just like, this is already built into the show. But I think, like, My Little Pony, since that's the example you used, they'll introduce you 40 new characters, and you're just like, I will buy all of those. You don't need to kill the ponies I already
Which
like.
we would have for Transformers if they made more trucks.
That's what I'm saying. It's like,
Which, by the way, apparently the ultimate form of robot is a truck.
Yeah.
Because all the Autobot leaders are a truck. Like a truck with some sort of trailer. That's
That
the
makes
pinnacle.
sense to me.
Yeah.
The pinnacle.
But that makes sense to me. Like, the other things, like you turning into a gun doesn't make sense to
Not
me.
practical. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Pick me up.
pick me up and shoot me at somebody.
No, not that guy. Oh, he was my friend.
No, I'm gonna drop everything. Okay, so this movie was not a success. It like barely made its money back.
Yeah.
And it turned a whole generation of dudes into slightly grumpier dudes. It was 99th in the top 100. Like, it barely squeaked into the top 100.
And killed several actors.
It killed several actors. Oh, speaking of which, the My Little Pony movie came in at 97. So it was two above. And I'm pretty sure no one died in that movie. And, of course, as we've told you a million times before, the top movie of 1986 was...
Top Gun?
Top Gun,
Yeah.
that's right. Crocodile Dundee and Platoon.
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 Did I say it weird?
I said it weird.
Yeah, and there are just so many questions. But, okay, so we know that you recommend this movie.
Right. It's not as high as maybe you think.
So, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 to 10 floating decapitated Unicron
Right.
heads, how many...
So I'm going to give it a 6, but I'm removing some of my emotional connection with it. This is
Okay.
This is just as a recommend. Again, the ideal person I'm recommending this to
Okay.
is someone to look at this film almost as film studies, or like I'm going to drink some beers and eat some tacos and watch a crazy movie like Miami Connection or Transformers the movie. It is its own unique cinematic experience, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's enjoyable in the traditional sense. So that's what I'm doing.
Okay. But you're landing on 6.
Yes.
Okay.
Continue. Continue the podcast.
All right. I don't know if I can, but I'll try. Bill?
Yes.
How many decapitated Unicron heads, and do you recommend people watch this movie?
Well, first, 10 out of Unicron heads for the soundtrack.
I did enjoy the soundtrack.
Because it's ridiculous.
There's Weird Al on it. What?
And a band called Kick Your Axe that they had to change their name to Spectre General because it was in a kid's movie.
And then they saw the movie and they were like, I think our name was the least offensive about this movie.
But no, I would hovering around 6 for similar reasons. And yes, on the emotional side, conditionally, absolutely. But if you don't have that emotional connection, for slightly different reasons, because you said beer and taco, this is a Mountain Dew movie. This is Mountain Dew the movie, right? It's just
Mountain Dew the movie. I love that.
A million robots, but I mean, and it's not chaos like the Michael Bay ones, but it's just like, let's just go crazy. Let's just take a cartoon and go nuts and just see that, like, what a kid's cartoon can be at its absolute limit.
Yeah, this is kind of almost along the lines when I'm thinking of like some of these darker, like Ralph Bakshi, like wizards, and like, this is a cartoon for adults. Like, this is not for kids, and they marketed the kids. This is fascinating.
Yeah.
This is something that would show on the back wall of Film Bar.
Yeah. This is something that...
I'm wrong.
That context I can understand.
This is a cult movie marketed to children.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
It's very weird. So weird. Okay. I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate you sharing your opinions. So Bill, the reason that we chose this movie is because you have actually done like a presentation, which we can link to in the blog post. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? I don't recommend this movie, and I refuse to give it a numerical value.
That's okay. Sure, really quickly, Jose and I were doing a show in New York many years ago, and my character went off on a rant about like socialism and like adult cynicism versus childlike, cooperation and gender roles and hero worship in Transformers. And afterwards, he's like, you should do that as an Ignite.
Yeah.
So I submitted it, and I did, and it was a lot of fun. And I talked about some of the same stuff here about how the good guys, they use their grief to come together, and the bad guys use their grief to pull apart. And that's what ultimately, because they were more powerful, but they lost because they couldn't work together, and
they couldn't stop throwing each other out of another guy.
And that's really something I pulled out of that. Like, honestly,
stop fighting on this train.
And that, like, dealing with grief and swearing and rock and roll and things that it just really affected my growth in those ways, and just wanted to share that.
Yeah.
And it's good. I mean, your presentation is good. I was excited to watch this movie based on your presentation. And now here we are. So what is your deep cut recommendation? Whoever wants to start.
Shoot. So, you know what? I'm going to... It's not that deep, but I'm going to recommend the new Bumblebee movie.
Okay.
It feels like... So if you've disliked the Michael Bay stuff... this feels like it's one step out of that world. That it's kind of returning Transformers to where they're characters. And there is a couple of points to where because again, it's kind of set in the 80s and 90s, right? It's kind of, that's an excuse to use some of the old designs, and it feels like if you wanted to...
so like the Transformers look more like the old Transformers looked?
Oh, because like that. It's kind of set in the 80s and 90s. I forget exactly when. But if you ever if you were a kid and you wanted to see what a movie adaptation of that show was like. Bumblebee, in my mind, is the first real example of what is a translation from that to that. So
Okay.
it was fine. It was fun. It wasn't fantastic, but it was if you wanted to see what that step was like. In some ways, it felt like.
John Cena's in that movie, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Bill, what is your deep cut recommendation?
Based off of this discussion, I would recommend American Pop, which is a lesser-known Bakshi film, because I think it kind of does the same thing. It's also an animated film. Everybody knows Wizards and heavy metal. American Pop's kind of the history of music through one family, generation to generation to generation. But being Bakshi, it's got that same sort of like, and then World War II happened, and everything's gone. And these kind of like revitalizations of generation after generation in the same way as Transformers, that sort of abrupt, you get invested, and then it's ripped away from you. So, yeah, I'd go American Pop.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, so like the Bakshi animations were animations, but for adults.
Okay.
Like almost rated R. So there was an edge when you, as a kid, discovered these things because your parents thought that they were for kids.
It's a cartoon. You go ahead.
And he even did an adaptation of Lord of the Rings.
I've seen that.
Yes.
Right.
So that's it.
Okay.
And there's a part of it that's a little disturbing. And he also
A lot
uses
of
like
it
this
is pretty disturbing.
right. And so that's kind of that realm right there. But
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna recommend, based on like,
Tylenol
oh my god, yes, I recommend
and tequila.
taking a nap. So we watched it with the kids, and I think Zoe felt similarly to me and was just like, so do any of these robot people turn into a toilet? Like, is one of them a dust buster? Or, like,
Right.
stuff like that. But she wanted to know what the big deal was about Orson Welles, and so we actually stopped the movie and explained Orson Welles and explained, like, Citizen Kane. So I'm going to recommend Citizen Kane, so that you can be like, oh, now I get why anyone cared at all that it was the voice of Orson Welles. But, like, also, why alter the voice? Why alter it? Like, let it be the voice of Orson Welles. Anyway, so I think that's my recommendation.
I want that DVD two-pack.
That's pretty deep.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just reading like the iTunes summary. It's like, the year is 2005. Robots have conquered the whatever, and then Unicron. Parentheses. Orson Welles, comma Citizen Kane.
Yes.
The kid is going, yes.
Finally, the man from the wine commercials is here to tell me about my robot friends. Yeah, in the year 2005, when I read that, I was like, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's
They nailed it.
Nailed it.
nailed it. We are all robots, aren't we? Here's the top page of my notes. It says Transformers the movie 1986. What am I looking at? Chomp chomp. What the fuck is happening? Like, those are my notes.
On my notes, I have dark as fuck 3 times.
Yes. It really, really is. Okay, so Bill, tell us a little bit about the Torch.
Sure. Torch, we've been around for a few years. Improv theater over in Central Phoenix.
A lot of years. Many, many, many.
Yeah, I suppose so now.
Since 2005.
Yeah.
And
When robots took over.
Laserbeaks founded our theater. But no, we've been doing long form over there for a few years. We really enjoy it. Just like having people come by and do classes and shows with us and play.
Yeah.
We do the Phoenix Improv Festival in April, so it's a good time.
Yeah, so if you are somebody who's in the greater Phoenix area, we always only exclusively talk to you at the end of the podcast. Definitely check out the Phoenix Improv Festival. Like, you couldn't possibly have a better time during that weekend of April. Mm-hmm. So come join it, and I'll put links to all of the different websites where people can find you. Do you want to just tell them real quick what the websites are? It's like torch.com, right?
It's thetorchtheater.com.
Theater.com. thetorchtheater.com, and what's...
Torch.com is for flashlights.
Right. And what's the Phoenix Improv Festival website?
PhoenixImprovFestival.com.
See, I should have guessed that one,
not
the other one. And Nathan, where can everybody find all of your things?
SquishyStudios.com on the Facebooks and Twitters, which I don't use.
Okay, very good, very good.
I still check it compulsively, of course.
You just don't ever put anything out there?
It seems. I mean, I'm just going through a cycle.
Okay, that's fine. And you can find me at nctphoenix.com, both the place and the website. No, nctphoenix.com is not the name of the place, but you can figure that out, I hope. And we're mentioning it again. You can see Nathan and Krissy and the Most Excellent 80s Movie Podcast at the Big Pine Comedy Festival coming up the weekend of September 18th. We figured out the day, but I don't remember. The Sunday that comes after the 18th of September at Big Pines Comedy Festival in Flagstaff, Arizona. Anything else that we need to
and we
mention?
will be talking about Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th. Yep. Hey, thanks so much for listening. Like, rate, review, thumbs up, tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell your pets. We really appreciate it when you tell people about the podcast. And hey, remember to be excellent to each other and...
Till all are one.
I don't know what that means. Beep up, dibbly bop. Wait, what do you want me to say?
No, that's fine. Keep that in.
Okay.